Have you ever felt a chill crawl up your spine from a story someone told you? A story so close to reality that it could very well be true? This collection of ghost stories comes from ordinary people recounting experiences that have left them shaken. Each tale is set in a familiar place where normality becomes the breeding ground for the paranormal. These stories are shared in plain, everyday language, making them even more unsettling because they sound like something that could happen to anyone, including you. Imagine yourself in these everyday situations, but with a twist of the supernatural that turns the mundane into the terrifying. So, pull up a chair, light a candle, and prepare to look over your shoulder as you journey through these chilling tales. Each story is a window into a moment where the ordinary world intersects with the unknown.
It was just another Thursday afternoon when I decided to visit the town library. The old building had always been a place of solace, with its towering bookshelves and the comforting smell of old pages. Everything appeared just as it should be, quiet and serene, with a few patrons scattered around reading. As I browsed through the aisles, I picked up a faint whisper. Assuming it was just someone speaking softly, I continued my search for a good read. But the whispering persisted, growing slightly clearer, though I still couldn't make out the words. It seemed to follow me, no matter which aisle I was in. The whispers became unnervingly distinct when I reached the section of old historical texts. The air grew colder, and the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. I realized the whispers weren't coming from a person, but rather they echoed out from the books themselves, each whisper a plea for help that never came.
Driving home late at night has never bothered me. The roads leading to my house are well lit and usually quite safe. That night, the road was empty, and my headlights cut through the darkness ahead. Everything was normal until I glanced in my rearview mirror. What I saw made my heart skip a beat. There was a figure sitting in the back seat, barely visible. I jerked around immediately, but the back seat was empty. I told myself it was just my imagination, the result of being tired and driving at night. I looked back into the mirror and there it was again, a vague silhouette like a person shrouded in shadow. This time I didn't look away. The figure slowly raised a hand, pointing forward, before fading away completely. The rest of the drive home, I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone.
I was at the supermarket, pushing a cart down the brightly lit aisles. It was late and the store was nearly empty, which made it easier to get my shopping done faster. I was in the cereal aisle deciding between brands when the overhead lights flickered briefly. At first I didn't think much of it. However, as I continued shopping, I noticed a shadow that didn't align with anything around it. It was like a dark blot on the floor, shapeless and shifting. I moved my cart forward, but the shadow seemed to follow. I tried to ignore it, focusing on my shopping list, but the shadow grew larger. As I turned into the next aisle, I saw it stretch up the shelves and over the products, as if it was searching for something or someone. It was then that I decided to leave my cart and exit the store quickly, not wanting to find out what would happen if the shadow caught up to me.
Section 5. The Empty Swing. There's a small park by my house, with a set of swings that local kids frequent. One windy evening, I took a walk to clear my head. The park was deserted, the swings swaying slightly in the breeze, all except one, which was moving as though someone was vigorously swinging on it. Curious, I approached it, thinking maybe a child was there, but it was completely empty. I stopped the swing with my hand, holding it still. As soon as I let go, it began swinging again with force, as if an invisible child had resumed playing. I stepped back, confused and a bit frightened. As the swing continued to move, I heard soft, giggly laughter, like that of a child, but no one was there. The sound seemed to come from all around, yet nowhere specific. I left the park quickly, the sound of laughter echoing behind me.
Section 6. The basement light. Our house has an old basement that we rarely use, mainly for storage. One night, the light in the basement turned on by itself. I noticed it through the small window that gives a view into the basement from the backyard. Thinking I had perhaps left it on earlier, I went down to turn it off. As I reached the bottom of the stairs, the light flickered and buzzed, casting strange shadows on the walls. The room felt unnaturally cold, and I had the eerie feeling of being watched. I hurried to the light switch, which, to my surprise, was already in the off position. I flicked the switch a few times, but the light stayed on. Then suddenly, it turned off on its own, plunging the basement into darkness. I didn't wait around to see what would happen next. I rushed upstairs, the chill from the basement seeming to follow me.
Every night for a week, at exactly 3:03 a.m., I would wake up to the sound of footsteps in the hallway outside my bedroom. At first I thought it was one of my housemates, maybe going to the kitchen for a late-night snack. But the footsteps sounded different, hesitant, dragging. One night I gathered enough courage to open my door a crack to look out. The hallway was empty, but the footsteps continued, moving towards my door. I slammed it shut and locked it, heart pounding in my chest. The next morning I asked my housemates, but none of them had been up at that time. The footsteps returned each night, always at the same time, always stopping just outside my door. I never did open it again.
It was a normal day at the office until I started hearing whispers every time I walked down the main hallway. The whispers were low, almost hissing, and impossible to decipher. The whispers grew louder each time I passed through the hallway, raising the hairs on the back of my neck. I tried to ignore them, but they became increasingly insistent, almost angry. I felt an inexplicable dread each time I needed to use that hallway. One day I decided to stand still in the hallway, listening intently. The whispers suddenly stopped, and in that silence a cold breath swept past me as if someone had run by very fast. After that the whispers never returned, but the memory of that cold passing shiver stayed with me.
Our attic has a small window that can be seen from the street. One evening as I returned home, I glanced up and saw a face looking down from the window. It was pale, with wide, staring eyes. I rushed inside, up to the attic, but found it empty and undisturbed. Puzzled and a bit shaken, I went back outside to look again. The face was still there, watching me. This time I noticed it didn't blink, nor did it move. It was unnaturally still, almost like a mask. I called a friend who lived nearby to come over. When they arrived, I pointed out the face in the window. They looked puzzled and told me they couldn't see anything. When I looked again, the face was gone. I never saw it again, but I always feel watched whenever I pass by that window.
These stories, derived from the experiences of ordinary people, remind us that sometimes the line between the mundane and the supernatural is thinner than we think. Each tale in this collection brings a shiver, a glance back, or a quickened pulse. They remind us that the world is filled with mysteries, and perhaps in our everyday lives we brush past the paranormal more often than we realize. Remember, the next time you feel a chill or think you see something out of the corner of your eye, maybe, just maybe, you're not as alone as you think. Whether these stories are mere figments of the imagination or windows to unseen realities, they undeniably leave us questioning the shadows in our seemingly ordinary world.